I decided to test my chess blindfold skills by playing against ChatGPT. There were errors on both sides and a lot of bugs. Let's get to it. I played e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. So the Italian opening. I like this because I'm comfortable with this opening, and that makes it easier to see where all the pieces are. d6. Better is bishop c5. So I told ChatGPT to play like a beginner, but still play decently. So the first thing ChatGPT does is lock out its bishop. d3, bishop e7, knight c3. Now, here we come to a very interesting point in the game. So the move shown was black castling, and I didn't realize it at the time, but later I'm like, wait a minute, where is this knight? It never was moved to f6, and that's because ChatGPT didn't actually show me the move. There were a couple moves where it didn't show me, but then it let me input the next move. So I had to question it. It's like, oh yeah, I did this move. So I think one of the moves that it did was move the knight earlier, and then it didn't, I couldn't see it. So I'm like, what move did you do? So maybe it moved again. So that was one of the core issues that caused some horrible errors between me and ChatGPT's understanding of our position. So to show you approximately what the position should be, I'm going to just let black have this extra move of knight f6. It doesn't really affect things. So I'm going to just move my bishop here, black castles, and I actually moved straight to e3 in the game. So now black has an extra knight on f6, but obviously I can't show you a game where the knight is still back here and black castles. So this is approximately accurate. Black plays bishop g4, pinning the knight to my queen, and normally I want the queen to stay so that the queen could recapture and this pawn doesn't capture and disrupt my pawn structure. But I want a castle on the queen side, and I want to attack on the king side. So if this pawn were out of the way, then the rook could attack the king on the g-file. So I move my queen to d2, inviting black to take my knight and disrupt my pawn structure, and allowing myself to castle queenside. a6, I saw that black could play b5 and push the bishop around, and if the bishop retreated, then the knight could come and force a trade, and this bishop is a great attacker, puts pressure on the f7 point, so I didn't want to allow that. a3, b5, retreat to a2, and now knight d4. This would be really good if my queen were still on d1 and if I really didn't want to disrupt the pawn structure, but I make a really interesting decision. I castled queenside, and yes, I'm playing blindfolded, but I could see that black could trade knights and fork my rooks. I was inviting black to do so. I wanted this to happen because I can get this rook onto the g-file, black could take, and say take back with the king, and then my queen and bishop, they're going on this diagonal, the bishop can go on h6, attack the g7 point, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to sustain my memory for too much longer playing blindfolded, so I just wanted to get something going, and I thought an exchange sacrifice would be a beautiful way to do it. So in the game, black went c5, and now I invite black to do the same thing, trade knights, take back with the bishop, and fork my rooks. And now black took with the bishop. So I'm really lucky. I have an opening to get my rook into this G file, and I don't have to sacrifice a rook for a bishop. Now I would expect black to take this f3 point with the knight, and then attack the queen, but after the queen moves, say the e2, and attacks the knight, there's not a lot of squares for the knight, so it might not be so good, I'm not sure. Either way, black goes queen d7. So queen d7 allows this rook to swing over and get into the queen side. So I like that, but the queen doesn't really do much besides that. So I decide to take the knight to make sure that this f3 point won't be taken in the future. And even with blindfolded, I was already thinking about my knight having to evade capture and wondering whether I have some moves. And I'm like, yep, the e2 square is open. So I went there. And black moves his rook from a8 to c8. So it's bearing down on my king. Black can double up on the c file later. Then I go rook g1. Now this may be a mistake. This rook is bearing down on the king, but it might have been nicer for this rook to go to the g file, bear down on the king, and then I have two rooks on great files, and this pawn maybe could just march and both disrupt black's pawn structure and get both rooks activity into the game. But notice, if you're doing correct notation, you need to say rook h to g1, not rook d to g1. In my directions to ChatGPT, I just said rook g1. So once you have something that could cause confusion, ChatGPT might self-destruct and make more errors on top of that. So we're going to see that pretty soon. Black plays queen takes h3. Admittedly, I thought my pawn was on h2. I missed that I pushed it earlier to provoke that black bishop to take on the f3 point. But I realized, oh yeah, the pawn is pushed up to h3, and that means that this h file is all the way open. So now, I'm glad that black took on h3, because now I can play rook h1, I can attack the queen, and after the queen moves, I can bring this rook into the game and get a battering ram. Plus this queen could potentially go to h6, and black made an error, but it was again based on the ChatGPT communication. Remember I told you that I signaled rook g1, but I did not tell ChatGPT which rook moved. That might have thrown it off. And then this is one of the moves that ChatGPT somehow did not print. So I did not know what move it was, so I have to say question mark, what move was it? So those bugs just spiraled into more bugs, because ChatGPT says, oh, queen takes h1 plus sign, which means queen takes h1 check. It's not check. Without this rook, it is check. And I was asking a question mark because I couldn't see the move, but it thought I was asking a question mark about like something else. And it's like, oh, this queen checkmated your king because on c1, correct spot, because it has no way of getting out of check. That's not true at all. If this rook wasn't there, it still would not be checkmate. This knight could block, this queen could block. So this, whatever errors led to this just made more and more errors. And I'm like, okay, well now I take back, and I'm obviously, I get a queen for a rook. I have a winning position, but I didn't do it because of chess strategy. I did it because of all these mistakes and like confusion, and then it led to more. Finally, after this, black said rook c5, and This time it was my mistake. I'm like, no, you keep making mistakes. There's a pawn on c5. But I didn't realize that's where this pawn is, because when my bishop took the knight, remember I wanted to trade this knight so it didn't take this pawn. Black's bishop on black's pawn on c5 recaptured. And then ChatGPT is like, oh, my mistake. I play rook c8. The rook is already on c8. So it's like sometimes if ChatGPT gets messed up from something, maybe it's not its fault, maybe it's just from whatever, and then I'm like, no, this is wrong, then it assumes something else. It gets really lost. So bottom line, we had to conclude the game because right after that I was like, hey, this knight on f6, when did it ever go there? Because remember, I never remembered seeing knight f6, but that was one of ChatGPT's blunders. Not a blunder, but a miscommunication when it was one of the moves that I couldn't see and I had to clarify. So I think when I clarified, it made another move. So ChatGPT's logic said, I already moved to knight f6, I can castle. And in this position, I'm like, wait a minute, this knight shouldn't have been there, because I never saw ChatGPT making that move, but it still castled. So I'm like, okay, this is just illegal and confusing in a couple different ways. So yes, I won by winning a queen for a rook, but the position is pretty double-edged, and I wish that black didn't take the rook so that I could go and honestly win through a kingside attack. But anyway, this is my experience playing ChatGPT. So if you play and you get a response with no move, remember that could throw everything off right there. So typical ChatGPT style, once there's one mistake, it leads to multiple mistakes. But I survived blindfolded against ChatGPT for that was 18 moves. I'm not the best blindfolded player. I can't play full games blindfolded with confidence, but this gave me a good sign. My blindfolded ability is currently better than ChatGPT.